7 unbelievably creepy true horror stories that haunted me at midnight. Ever the clock struck midnight, the moment dread crawls into the shadows, and the real terror begins. Hidden in the back of every mind are the whispers of the unknown, and the stories that live in the dark are not just tales, they're echoes that haunt you long after the lights go out. This isn't just a story, it's a journey into the realm of fear, where past midnight becomes a dark abyss, and reality twists into a nightmare. Brace yourself, for not all stories sleep quietly. It all began on a night just like any other, or so she thought. Sarah, a young woman with a penchant for the bizarre, found an old, rusty key in her attic, buried beneath decades of dust and cobwebs. It was odd, a key without a lock, its teeth jagged and worn. Its presence sent chills crawling up her spine, as if it was meant to unlock something unfathomable. She turned the key over in her palm, feeling an inexplicable heat radiating from it, an electric pulse that swirled through her fingers. A knot tightened in her stomach. What could it open? The air grew denser, thick with questions that begged to be answered. As fate would have it, that same evening, Sarah received a call from her childhood friend, Mark. He sounded frantic, breathless, urging her to come by. "Something's wrong. I need you," he gasped. The urgency in his voice sent a jolt of fear straight to her heart. She raced to his place, the key still gripped tightly in her hand. The streets were eerily empty, shadows seemed to dance a bit too frantically in the streetlights. When Sarah arrived, she found Mark pacing in his living room, a half-open window letting in a cold breeze. His face was pale, eyes wide and darting like a cornered animal. "I saw something I shouldn't have. I can't explain it." But as he spoke, time seemed to stretch, each word heavy with an unseen weight. Sarah felt her breath quicken, adrenaline pumping. What was happening? What had he witnessed that gripped him with such terror? "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." Just then, a deafening crash came from upstairs, reverberating through the walls like a death knell. They froze, eyes locked in shared horror. Without thinking, Sarah darted up the stairs, heart pounding like a drum, Mark sprinting behind her. Each creak of the floorboards echoed ominously, each step trembling with anticipation. When they reached the hallway, the temperature dropped, and the air crackled as if charged with electricity, a warning to turn back. They pushed open the door to Mark's bedroom, and what lay inside made them shudder. The air felt thick, oppressive, a physical weight, pressing down upon them. Dark figures seemed to swirl at the edges of their vision, flickering like television static. In the center, a mirror stood, fogged and cracked, reflecting nothing but shadows. But as they stared closer, a face emerged, a gnarled visage, twisted and deformed, mouth twisted in a silent scream. What was it? A ghost, a memory? Or something worse? A pulse of terror surged through Sarah, smothering her with fear. She turned to Mark, ready to scream, but found only silence, and just as she felt the grip of icy hands wrap around her throat, the mirror shattered, each shard glistening like jagged teeth in the dim light. The key slid from her fingers, clattering onto the floor. Could it have been a warning? Before her mind could register the chaos, everything went dark, and she felt herself pulling away from reality like a thread unraveling. What had they unlocked? What darkness awaited them beyond the black? The story was only just beginning. The darkness enveloped Sarah, a suffocating blanket that seemed to press against her chest. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic pulse in her ears. A cold sweat broke out on her skin. Had she truly just seen what was in the mirror? A part of her wanted to shake the memory, but the terror pulled her deeper, entangling her thoughts like tendrils of shadow. suddenly, a glimmer caught her eye in the pitch blackness, a fragment of the shattered mirror shimmering faintly. She reached for it, her fingers trembling, heart racing as she felt the piece's cool surface. Could it hold an answer? Maybe a clue to decipher the chaos that had just erupted. Mark's voice cut through the darkness, shaky and scared. "Sarah! Where are you?" His words were a lifeline. She stumbled toward him, guided by the sound. When Sarah finally turned to face Mark, she found him standing rigid, eyes wide in sheer panic. "Did you see it?" he whispered, as if just saying the words would conjure it back into existence. "Yes, it was horrible," she managed to breath. "But we need to find out what it means." Just then, the temperature continued to drop, the chill of an icy breeze swept through the room, and something dark flickered at the edge of her vision. Before she could fully process it, the lights overhead flickered back to life, casting a harsh glow against the walls. Their reflections in the neighboring window sent a shiver down her spine. Shadows seemed to ripple and dance, filling every corner of the room, but what really grabbed her attention was the mirror. The shards on the floor had formed a pattern, like a sigil, glowing ominously against the wood. With every passing second, a low hum resonated, vibrating through the air. It pulled them in, a compulsion they couldn't fight. Their breathing quickened as they shared a look of dread. Mark took a tentative step forward, drawn to the light. "If this is what haunted me, we have to face it. We can't run away." As Sarah's pulse raced, she nodded but felt a deep trepidation tighten her stomach. Was confronting this darkness the right choice? A conscience tugged at her, screaming that maybe some doors were best left unopened. But with hesitation lingering in the air like a thick fog, they stepped closer to the mirror's edge, ignoring the instincts screaming at them to flee. The glowing sigil pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. When they reached out, their hands hovered over the shards, and in that moment, the space around them seemed to whirl. A voice low and guttural echoed through the room, crooning words they couldn't decipher. Sarah felt the air shift, and the shadows began to stretch toward them, invasive and insidious. Then, without warning, the mirror emitted a searing light that engulfed the room. In an instant, the feeling of reality fracturing around them became impossible to ignore. They were no longer just in front of the mirror, they were being pulled into it, a vortex of colors and shapes twisting into a cyclone that swept away their senses. "I can't hold on!" Mark screamed, struggling against an invisible force that seemed intent on dragging them deeper into the abyss. "Fight it!" Sarah yelled back, but even her voice was being swallowed by the roar of chaos. Sparks twirled around them like fireflies, illuminating their terrified faces for the briefest moment before plunging them into darkness once more, and then it all stopped. The light dissipated. Silence reigned. Both of them hovered weightless, united by fear. But when they opened their eyes again, they were no longer in the bedroom. Instead, they stood in what appeared to be a twisted replica of Mark's house. Everything was wrong. The walls festered with mold, shadows sprawled across the floor, swirling like a tempest of despair. Where are we?" Mark stuttered, disbelief etched across his features. Ahead, a figure loomed, indistinct and shadowy. Its presence was heavy, suffocating. A familiar chill crept back, wrapping around Sarah's heart as if to recoil at the horror it sensed. What horrors awaited them in this darkened world? As the figure shifted, words formed heavy, resonating through the thick air. "You've unlocked the door to the underworld, now face the truth of your fears." What was waiting for them? What had they awakened? The nightmare had truly just begun. The atmosphere clung to them, thick and suffocating. Sarah felt the weight of dread pressing against her skin. Her heart raced, not knowing whether to flee or stand her ground. The air crackled with a dreadful energy, and the shadows around them writhed as if alive, responding to the figure's words. "Face the truth of your fears," the voice repeated, chillingly calm. Mark clenched his fists, body tense like a coiled spring. What does that even mean? His voice trembled, fear lacing each syllable. Sarah's mind raced. What truths could they possibly face in this twisted realm? The room felt like a living organism, pulsing with dark energy. Quickening her breath, the figure began to materialize, a distortion of light and shadow. Piercing eyes emerged from the darkness, cold, knowing. Sarah recognized that gaze. It mirrored her own deep-seated fears. "Sarah," the figure hissed. "Your fear is much closer than it seems." The shadows thickened around Mark, baring their fangs. A heavy shudder traveled through him. "What do you want?" he demanded, stepping back, but the floor beneath his feet felt unstable, like a thin layer of ice on a deep abyss. The figure tilted its head, studying them with a predatory gaze. "To make you confront the demons you hide. Denial brought you here, fear keeps you shackled." "Shackled?" Sarah echoed, her breath hitching. She lifted her chin, meeting the figure's gaze with reluctant resolve. "Who are you?" "I am what you refuse to acknowledge," the figure replied, voice a low rumble as if it came from the depths of the earth. "I am the truth you bury, the pain you dismiss. And soon, you will understand how fragile your control truly is." A sharp burst of clarity hit Sarah. She understood, though the recognition left an icy grip on her veins. This place was no mere reflection of Mark's home, it was a manifestation of their innermost fears and regrets. Mark stumbled back, bumping into a wall festering with black mold, a sight so grotesque it turned her stomach. "I don't want to hear this," he shouted, but the shadows twisted, wrapping tighter around him, pulling him deeper into the gloom. "Embrace it," Sarah yelled, reaching for him. "You can't run, Mark." With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged towards him, her fingers brushing against the darkness. It felt like ice cold and paralyzing. Then, with a desperate scream, she pulled him away from the suffocating grip. In that moment, the figure let out a howling laugh, ringing through the warped space. "What if you cannot escape, no matter how hard you try?" The laughter echoed as shadows swarmed them, clawing at their clothes, whispering abhorrent secrets that scraped against their minds. Suddenly, something sharp pierced the silence, a crack, a distortion in reality. Time warped, blurring borders between past and present, fear and hope. And then the whispering stopped. A silence so profound it shook them both to the core. "Sarah?" Mark's voice was low and quivering. "What if it's true? What if we can't escape?" Panic bubbled within her. "We have to try." Then, almost instinctively, they turned to face the figure, whose form warped and shifted, revealing the true essence of their fears, regrets and nightmares whispered in the shadows. The reality twisted like a raging storm, a portal of memories unleashed. Images flickered, regrets they de-buried, painful truths they de-sidestepped. "I want to let you do this to us," Mark shouted, shaking free from the shadow's grip. "We can fight this." "Fight merely empowers the darkness," the figure retorted, his voice dripping with sinister glee. "The only way out is through." As the shadows converged, desperate and ravenous, the very air shimmered. Sarah felt like she was drowning. Was this their only option? "Mark!" she called, gritting her teeth against the growing despair. "No matter what happens, we stick together." Suddenly, the floor beneath them cracked. The mirror fragment they had once seen flashed in her mind like a signal. Could it guide them out of this nightmare? "Hold on to me," Mark shouted. The darkness pulsed violently around them. They were teetering on the edge of oblivion, fighting the weight of their fears. But in that chilling moment, hope sparked an ember within them. "We will face this." With renewed determination, they stepped forward together. The shadows swirled, a tempest of fury and darkness, rising to confront their courage. What lay ahead was unfathomable, dangerous and unknown. But they had made a choice, to confront the demons that had brought them here. As the ground beneath them continued to quake, a portal began to open. But what awaited them on the other side? Was it salvation or a deeper darkness? Either way, they pushed ahead, embracing the uncertainty of the journey ahead. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they shot through the swirling darkness. An ethereal glow flickered ahead, pulsing like a heartbeat, red and stark against the shadows. Heart racing, Sarah pulled Mark close, the warmth of his hand grounding her in the chaos. "Where is this going?" Mark shouted over the noise, panic seeping into his words. "I don't know," she replied, teeth clenched tightly. "But we have to trust it. We can't." The ground crumbled beneath her, sending shards of reality splintering away. With a gasp, they leaped into the light, the shadows clawing at their backs in a final desperate grasp. They landed hard on cold, unforgiving concrete. Blinking against the brightness, they found themselves in a dimly lit room, the air thick with an overwhelming stench, damp and rotting. Is this real?" Mark whispered, as they stumbled to their feet, his eyes scanning their surroundings. The space was filled with memories strewn across the floor like discarded toys, torn photographs, rusty toys, and fraying clothes. As Sarah stepped forward, she recognized bits of her own history, remnants of her childhood, fading choices, and paths never taken. Each piece whispered secrets, too heavy to bear. This was not just a reflection of their fears, it was a graveyard of lost opportunities. Shadows lurked in the corners, remnants of those they had left behind, filling the spaces where their hopes used to breathe. "Sarah, look." Mark pointed to the far wall, eyes wide. A mirror stood there, cracked and warped, reflecting a distorted version of themselves. But beyond their images, dark figures writhed behind the glass, faces twisted in agony or rage. It felt like a portal, an invitation to confront the worst of themselves. "We can't," Sarah gasped, a chill racing through her body. She could feel their dark presences pressing against the boundaries of reality. They waited, hungry for recognition, for surrender. "Yes, we can," Mark insisted, grounding his feet. This is our chance. We can end this." His voice grew louder, an anchor in the shifting winds around them. The distorted mirror seemed to pulse, echoing their feelings. Silent screams climbed inside Sarah, intertwining with a sense of bravery. "You're right. We have to face this," she finally said, voice steadier than her heart felt. As they approached, shadows coiled tightly around their feet, trying to drag them backward. "This is just a trick. This isn't real," Mark shouted, trying to shake them off. "Don't fight it too hard." Sarah snapped, realizing that resistance only made it worse. She reached for the mirror, steadied herself, and peered into the depths. What she saw made her breath hitch. A younger version of herself mirrored back, eyes wide and frightened. But as she looked deeper, it became clear, the little girl was not just scared, she was lost. "Sarah," the child whispered, voice trembling with innocence. "Why did you leave me?" Each painful thought surged through Sarah like a tidal wave. "I didn't mean to," she cried, overwhelmed by the wrath of emotions she buried. "I was trying to be strong." Mark stepped beside her, his own reflection morphing. A young boy stood there, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You never stopped caring," he murmured, his words dripping with regret. "You just forgot me." A shudder ripped through them both as the mirror shimmered, heartbreaking truths locked within its depths. The shadows surged closer, closer. They could feel the darkness clawing at their minds. "No," was all Sarah could manage, gathering every ounce of willpower. "We won't disappear into this darkness. We remember who we are." Mark echoed her sentiment, anger and determination painting his features. "You are not controlling us anymore." The shadows shrieked as they began to dissolve, their cruel grip releasing. The memories they held tightened their grasp, but they fought back, expelling the darkness with every ounce of their energy. The mirror cracked, splintering into fragments that caught the light. But something else stirred within. It was the flicker of hope, an ember in the darkness ready to ignite. With a final push, they screamed together, "We choose to face our past." The air exploded with light, illuminating the chamber and disintegrating the shadows into whispers. They felt the ground tremble, this time with the promise of rebirth. As the pieces of the mirror fell away, a new reality unfolded beyond the entrance to a nightmare only half finished. What awaited them on the other side? Another layer of fear, or perhaps the road to freedom? One question rang clear in their minds as the remnants of the last shadow faded: was this truly the end or just the beginning of something far worse? The light enveloped them, wrapping around Sarah and Mark like a warm blanket against the chill of despair. But as they stepped forward, the warmth began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of dread. The room in which they found themselves transformed yet again, a vast, dark expanse that stretched endlessly ahead, the air heavy with a silence that felt ominous. "Where are we?" Mark's voice quivered as his gaze roamed across the void. I don't know," Sarah replied, anxiety sharpening her breath. The light had retreated, and the shadows crept closer once more, melding into the ground like tentacles ready to snare them again. Suddenly, whispers floated through the air, soft at first but quickly escalating into a cacophony of chaotic sound. "Leave, turn back, it's not safe," familiar voices echoed, blending with their own fears. "I can't stand this," Mark shouted, covering his ears, but the whispers seeped into his mind, relentless and insidious. Each one felt like a cold finger tracing along his spine. "Shut them out. We have to keep moving," Sarah shouted, forcing her legs to take a step forward. She couldn't succumb to the terror. They were so close, so near the promise of freedom. But every inch felt like walking through a nightmare, where the bounds of reality warped and twisted around them. As they moved, a flicker of movement caught Sarah's eye. Shadows morphed into forms, shifting and swirling like smoke. She squinted, heart pounding, and glimpsed outlines of people, familiar faces wrapped in anguish. Their eyes were hollow, souls lost in despair. "Sarah!" one called out, its voice distorted yet unmistakable. The face of her late grandmother, filled with sorrow. "You shouldn't have come back, no. This isn't real." Sarah gasped, clenching her fists. She wanted to scream for them to go away, to whimper in fear like a child, but she couldn't. She wouldn't let them see her break. "I want to let you drag me down." Mark stood frozen, entranced by the figures. "But they need us, don't you feel their pain?" His eyes shimmered with unshed tears, caught in the web of their haunting pleas. "Mark, snap out of it," Sarah shouted, tugging at his arm. "We can't help them. We're here for us. If we don't escape, we'll end up just like them." The shadows shifted closer, a chilling breeze whispering of regret and failure. Sarah could feel their coldness creeping under her skin, threatening to suffocate her resolve. "Mark, please." His expression shifted, doubt flickering in his eyes. "But what if we can't leave? What if we have to choose what?" Sarah edged closer, desperation driving her forward. "To abandon everything we still are. No. We fight. We don't let these shadows define us." Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to waver, buckling like waves in a storm. The faces in the darkness screamed and reached out. "Help us!" A sudden crack echoed, and the earth split open, revealing a gaping chasm that yawned wide, promising both doom and revelation. The whispers now turned to shrieks, the shadows converging like a tidal wave. "Mark, jump!" Sarah yelled, pulling him closer to her side. They had to leap together, a final act of defiance against the darkness that sought to consume them. They leaped into the void, fingers interlocked, hearts racing as the abyss swallowed them whole. A whirlpool of colors surrounded them, swirling, flashing like fireworks gone mad. They tumbled through a corridor of memories, their past and present colliding in a blinding collision. As they spiraled down, a deep voice, echoing like rolling thunder, boomed through the chaos. "You think you can escape? There are truths about yourselves you cannot ignore." Blackness enveloped them once more, silent, heavy, and thick with anticipation. What waited for them now? Would they face the revelations that could finally set them free, or were they plunging deeper into the very abyss they feared? With the void whispering like a siren, they braced for impact. The truth loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to spill over, relentless and waiting. Would revelations finally bring them peace, or would it unravel everything they had fought to hold on to? They landed with a heavy thud, the impact jolting their bodies and minds into a state of shock. Gritting her teeth, Sarah opened her eyes. She was amazed to find herself in a dimly lit room, the air thick with must and decay. Faded wallpaper hung in tattered strips from the walls, the remnants of a forgotten past. It looked like an abandoned house, a place that had once been filled with life but was now choked by shadows. Mark. Sarah's voice echoed, each syllable bouncing off the grimy walls. Panic rose in her chest as she spun around. But he was nowhere to be seen. Mark. Heart racing, she moved cautiously, half anticipating a ghostly figure to jump from behind the rotting furniture. The whispers were gone, but an unsettling silence enveloped her. It weighed down on her like a wet blanket, stifling her breath and clouding her thoughts. Stay calm, she whispered to herself. Focus on finding him. As she stepped forward, the floor creaked ominously beneath her feet, sounding like the groans of the past. She felt trapped, like a fly caught in an ancient web. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, teasing her sanity with the notion that they were not truly alone. Suddenly, a door swung open at the far end of the room, creaking on its hinges. The light spilling through was inviting but felt foreboding, like a moth drawn to flame. Sarah hesitated. Mark? No answer. Just the silence, heavy and oppressive. Okay, here goes nothing, she murmured, wading through the shadows toward the doorway. With each step, the air grew colder, wrapping around her like icy fingers. Cautiously, she pushed the door wider and stumbled into a small hallway. Decorated portraits lined the walls, frozen expressions of sorrow and longing, eyes that seemed to follow her. She shivered involuntarily. One painting caught her breath, an image of her grandmother, but younger, vibrant, and alive. Sarah. A voice called faintly from deeper within the unsettling corridor. Her heart raced. Mark. She rushed toward the voice, driven by urgency and hope. As she turned the corner, she stumbled upon a small room filled with mirrors, each reflecting a different version of herself. Some showed her as a child, others twisted her features in grotesque ways. One mirror was cracked, the fractured glass warping her image into something unrecognizable, a broken reflection of her fears come to life. What is this place? She thought desperately. What do you want from me? In that moment, the room darkened. The lights flickered and then went out completely, plunging her into a complete void. She felt a cold breeze sweep across her neck, sending shivers down her spine. Mark? She called, but her voice barely made a sound. With trembling hands, she touched the cold surface of the nearest mirror. As she did, it rippled like water, revealing a scene beyond the room they had leaped from, shadows writhing around their former selves. Then suddenly, Mark's face emerged from the glass, twisted with fear. Sarah! He screamed, desperation filling his eyes. Mark! She reached out toward him, but he was slipping away like sand through her fingers. Don't let them take you. He shouted, voice cracking. Fight! Frustration and fear surged through her veins like fire as reality warped around her. The whispers returned, but this time they rose to a deafening roar, urging her to submit, to succumb. Embrace the darkness, they hissed, clawing at her resolve. No! She yelled, clenching her fists. I won to let you win. And in that defiant moment, she felt a spark within. The shadows recoiled, wavering as if threatened by her light. With newfound determination, Sarah focused. She confronted the mirrors, the darkness, and the memories swirling around her. What are you? She demanded, staring into her fractured reflection, and then, in that fragile moment, she sensed something shift. The darkness began to tremble, as though it had unearthed a fear of its own. Something was about to break loose. It's time to wake up. She shouted, ready to reclaim her truth, but was she truly ready for the revelation that awaited her? The whispers started to intensify, their truths threatening to envelop her again. As Sarah stood at the precipice of her own fear, she could feel the ground beneath beginning to shake once more. What would she unearth if she finally faced herself? The urge to flee tugged at her instincts, but could she run from the very essence of who she was? Would unraveling this thread bring her closer to Mark or tear them apart forever? In the darkness, time stood still waiting for her choice. The mirrors shimmered restlessly as Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, each beat a reminder of the urgency pressing down on her. With a deep breath, she summoned the last bit of courage she had. "I will not let you take me," she shouted into the darkness, forcing her voice to rise above the cacophony of tortured whispers. The shadows recoiled again, retreating just enough for her vision to sharpen. She noticed the cracked mirror, the one reflecting a distorted version of her fears, shimmering ominously. It seemed almost alive, pulsating in rhythm with her heartbeat. What if it holds the key? She thought, stepping closer. "Sarah, don't." Mark's voice echoed from the depths, strained and urgent. "I don't want you to." The moment she reached out to touch the cracked surface, a pulse of dark energy surged through her, the whispers morphing into haunting faces that twisted around her. They were remnants of all her insecurities, failures, and regrets, harsh reminders of a life lived in fear of acceptance. In a desperate attempt to pierce through the fog of despair, she shouted, "I am more than my fears." The words erupted from her, raw and fierce. The shadows hesitated, quivering slightly as if they were unsure of how to proceed in the face of her defiance, but then came the chilling silence. It felt as though the very world around her inhaled sharply, waiting. She could almost feel the weight of ancient eyes watching, judging. Then, the silence shattered. A blinding light erupted from the mirror like a starburst, engulfing her vision. "No!" she cried, raising her arms to shield her eyes. "I want to go back." Yet, the light persisted, and inside it came voices, familiar voices. "Don't be afraid to face us," they beckoned. Within the glowing embrace of that light, images filled her mind. She saw her childhood, her family, even happy moments with Mark. The shadows grew spindly fingers, eager to snuff out the light, clawing at her spirit. "Believe in yourself, Sarah." Mark's voice rallied from the depths of the void. It was the spark she needed. Taking a deep breath, she let the light wash over her, absorbing its warmth. Focusing fiercely, she resisted the pull of the darkness, pushing back against it with everything she had, and then, she felt it. The walls trembled, a low rumble vibrating through the floor beneath her. A crash echoed through the hallway, sending dust and debris raining down from above. The mirrors screamed, shattering into 1,000 sparkling shards that fell like rain. Sarah stood firm, her will clashing with the remnants of the shadows that tried to reclaim her. "Fight!" she bellowed once more, her voice now a mighty roar. "I choose to live." Suddenly, the echoes of her declaration boomed through the corridor, resonating with something deep within the darkness. The shadows screeched in outrage. The room shook violently, blurring her surroundings into chaos. She felt the cold fingers of despair receding, a growing light engulfing her entirely, but just as she thought she could breathe again, a blinding light swallowed her whole, and as everything faded into darkness, one chilling thought ran through her mind: what if this was just the beginning? In the aftermath, she found herself lying on a grassy field under a star-studded sky. Baffled, she blinked against the brightness that enveloped her. Could she have escaped? Had she really triumphed? "Mark!" she called into the vastness, her heart racing with hope and dread. The silence stretched before her, punctuated only by the whisper of the wind through the trees. Then, from the shadowy edge of the forest, a figure emerged, a familiar silhouette cloaked in mystery. And that familiar figure was not alone. With a chill running down her spine, Sarah prepared herself. Who or what awaited her in this new realm? Was it salvation or something more sinister? A low voice called out from the darkness, "Welcome back, Sarah. We have been waiting for you." The figure stepped closer, a wavering silhouette against the soft glow of countless stars. Sarah squinted through the darkness, desperately trying to discern who it was that had spoken her name. The voice was a phantom from her memory, echoing with a familiarity that sent shivers racing down her spine. Then, she recognized the face, yet it was distorted, warped in a way that made her instincts scream for her to flee. "Evelyn," she stammered. It was her long-lost friend, but the expression was eerie, almost predatory. "You've come home, Sarah," Evelyn whispered, a sly smile creeping onto her twisted lips. "Aren't you glad to see me?" Sarah's heart raced, memories flooding back of laughter, shared secrets, and a bond that once felt unbreakable. But now, that bond felt tainted, corrupted by shadows of the past. "What happened to you?" she whispered, inching back, unsure if she should trust the girl she once adored. Evelyn stepped into the light, revealing a group of figures behind her, more familiar faces, all of whom had been lost to her long ago. Their eyes gleamed with an unsettling hunger, each carrying a burden of dark energy that made Sarah's pulse quicken. "Don't you see?" Another voice chimed in, a handsome boy from high school, James. "We've been waiting for you. We're not the ones who left you are. But I didn't choose this. You don't understand." Panic seeped into Sarah's voice, cracking like glass. "I had to escape. I had to get away." Evelyn's expression softened momentarily, but the darkness behind her eyes remained. "That's the thing, Sarah. You never really left. Your fears, your regrets, they've followed you here. Like us." With each word, the figures stepped closer, their growing presence wrapping around her like a living blanket of dread. Sarah stumbled back, feeling the earth shift beneath her, absorbing the eerie tension emanating from her long-lost friends. "Why would you want me back?" she demanded, pressing herself against the rough bark of a nearby tree. "You should hate me. I was the one who ran away." James chuckled, a sound that sent chills racing through her. "We don't hate you, Sarah. You are part of us. The darkness we live in needs you as much as you need it." The moment those words left his lips, the ground trembled again. Shadows snaked around Sarah's feet like vines, pulling her closer into their murky depths. She could feel the familiar weight of her ghosts wrapping around her, the echoes of past regrets clamoring for attention. "Sarah!" Mark's voice suddenly broke through the haze from far back in the shadows. "Stay strong. Don't let them." But just like that, the voice faded, swallowed by shadows once more. Panic surged inside her as the reality of her isolation struck. The darkness swirled, throbbing around her like a living entity, ready to claim her. The figures advanced. Evelyn's smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp, too hungry for comfort. "We can help you, Sarah. Join us. Together, we can finally be free." The world spun. In that moment, Sarah was faced with a choice: surrender to the darkness that clung to her very soul, or fight against it with everything she had left. Through the chaos, she felt a flicker of warmth, the memory of Mark's encouragement. "No!" she shouted defiantly, pushing back against the terror enveloping her. "I'll never be like you." The laughter around her turned into a cacophony of rage and despair. Shadows surged, crashing against her like waves. She strained against the tide, glimpsing Mark's familiar figure re-emerging from the shadows, stretching out a hand toward her, but would she reach for it in time? Would the past finally let go, or would she be pulled under forever? As she hesitated, a series of whispers unfurled behind the looming shapes, a troubling realization lurking in the dark. What if you're not the only one who needs to fight? With her heart pounding fiercely, Sarah felt that she was teetering on the edge of something monstrous. The echoes of the past promised troubling revelations, tinged with desperation. What truths awaited her in this realm, and could she survive the battle that lay ahead? The shadows surged like a living beast, hungry and relentless, pressing in from all sides. Sarah gasped, her heart thumping wildly as she fought for breath. The familiar faces of her old friends seemed to morph right before her eyes, their features twisting into grotesque masks of disappointment and rage. She felt their unseen fingers tugging at her soul, dragging her toward the darkness they inhabited. Evelyn stepped forward, her smile widening, and for a brief moment, Sarah thought she glimpsed the girl she remembered innocent, mischievous, full of life. Then it vanished. "You don't realize, do you?" Evelyn purred, voice silky smooth but dripping with malice. "This is where you belong. There is no escaping who you are. We're all part of this together." "Together?" Sarah spat, every ounce of courage pushing through the terror. She shook her head violently, fighting against the pull of her friend's words. "This isn't together. It's a nightmare." "Is it?" James interjected, stepping closer. "Or is it just the truth? You don't have to pretend anymore. This is your path. All you have to do is embrace it." As if on cue, the darkness roared in agreement. It tightened around her, a coil of despair that threatened to crush her spirit. Mark's figure flickered in the distance, his silhouette wavering amidst the shadows. "Sarah, hold on. You have to fight." Panic flared within her. The noise around her grew overwhelming, a hideous chorus of familiar voices murmuring her failures, her betrayals, the choices that led her to run. Each whisper felt like a knife pressing into her flesh, forcing her to confront the demons she thought she'd left behind. "Why did you leave us?" The question sliced through the chaos, laced with anguish. A voice she knew all too well, one that echoed in her dreams. It was Evelyn's again, but now there was a sorrowful kind of intensity to it, a blend of betrayal and longing. She wanted to scream back, "I had to live." But as the words formed, they got lost in the swell of despair. Sarah felt the shadows pulling her further into their depths. It was too tight, too overwhelming. She couldn't breathe. Her thoughts spiraled toward the dark abyss of her own regrets. Would she give in? Was this the only way to find peace? No. She screamed, more to herself than anyone else. "I want to let you take me." With sheer force of will, she reached out, her hand outstretched toward Mark. The brief connection sparked through the air, an electric promise of hope. She could see it in his eyes, the same fierce determination that had guided them through hard times before. "Hold on." Mark's voice cut through the haze, stronger now, almost tangible. "I'm right here. You're not alone, Sarah." In that instant, the shadows screamed, a chorus of fury and anguish. The ground beneath her feet shifted violently, as if a chasm were opening. Sarah felt an instinct to retreat, but the urge to reach for Mark blazed brighter than her fear. As the shadows clawed at her, she lunged forward, ignoring the sickening grip of the dark around her, but just as she grasped Mark's hand, a sudden explosion of light erupted from the depths of the shadows, blinding her for a moment. She shouted out, fighting the sudden disorientation as she was pulled back toward the edge where she had started. "Do you really think you can escape?" A voice hissed coldly, echoing through the light. "We are part of you." As darkness clashed with light, a terrible realization struck Sarah. If she escaped, what other truths would she have to confront in the light? Would the memories of her friends haunt her, even in the safety of her new life? The world around her twisted, and with a snap, everything fell silent. Then came the whispers. "Will you face what's next?" In that silence, a new fear crept in. Not just of the darkness behind her, but of the path ahead. Would she find closure? Or would it leave her with more questions than answers? What awaited her in this new confrontation with the past? The light promised hope, yet the shadows lingered, whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear. The light enveloped Sarah and Mark, rocking them gently, steady yet overwhelming. When the brightness faded, they found themselves outside a familiar field, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. For a moment, they were disoriented, surrounded by a peace that felt almost foreign. "Is this real?" Sarah whispered, her heart fluttering with disbelief. The warmth caressed her skin, a stark contrast to the shadows they had just battled. Mark held her hand tightly, his grip a lifeline. "I think we did it," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, but just as hope began to blossom, uncertainty gnawed at her. What if this is another trap? What if no more what ifs? Mark interrupted, his eyes fierce. We faced our fears. We broke free. A soft wind rustled through the tall grass, the gentle sound of nature a soothing balm on their frayed nerves. Yet, in the distance, the figures of their past loomed like ghosts on the horizon, flickering in and out of clarity. Familiar faces distorted by shadows called out from the depths of their memories, aching for recognition. Look, Mark said, pointing. They're there, but they can't reach us. They have no power here. Sarah squinted against the setting sun, feeling a strange pull in her heart. But what if they're still waiting for us to confront them? We can't just forget. Then we won tea, he replied, determination hardening his features. This isn't just about escaping. It's about understanding who we are. In that instant, she understood. They couldn't erase the past, their lives were woven from every experience, the good, the bad, the forgotten. It was time to stop running. Together, she replied, her voice firm. We'll face this, whatever comes next. With fierce resolve, they turned toward the horizon, where the fading light met the encroaching darkness. Sarah felt a cramp in her chest, but she urged herself forward, holding tightly to Mark's hand. Each step felt lighter, as if shedding the weight of old fears with every stride. As they reached the edge of the field, the shadows danced and pulsed like a restless sea. Memories flickered, shapes of their friends emerging, comforting yet haunting. Sarah could hear whispers, a soft echo of her childhood laughter, her grandmother's gentle voice. They were not forgotten, they were part of her story. I'm ready, she declared, courage swelling within her. Let us give them a chance to be heard. Mark nodded, and together they called out, we're here. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them. Faces took form, Evelyn, James, and others they had lost. Each face bore a semblance of sadness and regret, but now there was no anger, just longing. I'm sorry, Sarah shouted, tears pricking her eyes. I never wanted to abandon you. I thought leaving was the only way to grow. A ripple of understanding passed through the shadows. Evelyn stepped forward, her expression gentler now, more human. We need you to understand, Sarah. You never truly left. Every time you buried us, you buried a part of yourself. It's okay to be afraid. But you cannot deny us if you want to move forward. I want to remember you, Sarah said, her voice steady as she looked at each familiar face, wrapping the memories in warmth. I want to embrace who you are in me. The shadows flickered, swirling around them like a gentle breeze. The tension eased as understanding washed over them all, the darkness retreating into the confines of the past. It felt like they were finally letting go, allowing the shadows to find their peace. As the last evening light faded, Sarah exhaled, feeling lighter, freer than she had in years. Thank you, she whispered, feeling the connection surge between them, as if the memories were finally being honored rather than feared. The figures began to fade back into the light, leaving behind shimmering trails of hope. Remember us, Evelyn said softly, a gentle smile illuminating her features before disappearing into the embrace of the night. Once again, it was just Sarah and Mark, standing in the twilight of their past, but it no longer felt like a prison. It felt like home. They embraced tightly, allowing the world to settle around them. Where do we go from here? Mark asked, his voice hopeful yet unsure. Forward, Sarah replied, a grin breaking through her emotions. Together. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, they turned away from the echoes of their past and took the first step toward the unknown. And somewhere in the depths of the dark, the shadows whispered gratitude, for they too had finally found a way to let go. Don't wait another second. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button with all your might to help feed the algorithm. And we want to hear your thoughts. Flood the comments section below with your theories about the ending. Did Sarah and Mark truly escape their past? Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for the channel and connect with the community.